Should we call the meeting to order? Let's call the meeting to order.
Yeah, let's make that a question.
We're gonna call the meeting to order. So, I'll call it the meeting to order.
All right, Tom Dester.
Here.
Scott Holwick.
Here.
Roger Lang.
Here.
Renee Davis.
Here.
Dan Wolford.
Here.
Ken Houston.
Here.
Wes Lowry.
Here.
Kevin Bowden.
Here.
Alex Merklin.
Here.
Joe Mahalski.
Here.
Chris Huffer.
Here.
Price Hadley.
Here.
Chelsea Wilson. Michael Castillo.
Here.
Is Holly here today too?
She's supposed to be coming in.
Okay. Heather McIntyre is here. John Gage is also with us. Any other staff I missed? And then Councilmember Christ.
All right, very good.
We have a quorum,
We
Sharon.
have a full house today. All right, let's start with approval of the previous month's minutes. Any questions or comments from the board?
Hearing none, I move the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, move second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, water status report.
Okay, the flow in the St. Vrain Creek this morning was 122 CFS. The 125-year average for this date is 313 CFS. Currently, the call on St. Vrain Creek is Divide Reservoir, and that's a priority date of 1879. Call on the South Platte is Harmony Ditch, and the priority date on that is 1897. Button Rock is currently at an elevation of 6382 or approximately 12,613 acre feet, which is 17 feet down or about 3,500 acre feet down. Union Reservoir is at a gauge height of 18.1 and with about 6,470 acre feet in storage. That's down about 6,200 acre feet. Basin reservoirs at the end of April were approximately 59% full. Last year at this time, the reservoirs were 82% full. So kind of a bleak picture, but hopefully we'll be getting some more water in the bigger reservoirs.
So what percentage is Button Rock and Union at right now? I don't know that.
Oh, in terms of percentage, I don't know. I have to do the math.
Okay. You have the whole meeting.
Button Rock's about 3/4 full and
Yeah.
Union's about half full.
Okay.
I believe Button Rock is around 82%, Union closer to 50%.
Okay, thanks.
You know, I read something that they were waiting to open Union because of the lack of water. Is that?
Yeah, Union's open, fishing, walking. The swim beach itself is not open, and I think Chelsea's gonna give you a quick report on that one when she
Good.
gets up.
All right, we'll wait for you. All right, thanks. Thanks, Kevin. All right, any public invited to be heard?
We have none.
Okay, good. Any agenda revisions?
I have none.
Good. Couple nuns for development activity. My goodness. Okay. I guess we'll start with Button Rock Reserve and Miles, you gonna talk about that?
We have Price with us today instead of Miles.
Oh, okay.
Where do you want to start? Awesome. Hello, everybody. Met almost all of you at some point in the last 5 years working for the city, but my name is Price Hadley. I'm the Senior Watershed Ranger for the city of Longmont. I get the pleasure of caretaking Button Rock Preserve, which is our 3,000 acre nature preserve and the preserve that surrounds our primary drinking water source for the city. I'll keep it brief today because I know you all have already had a busy afternoon. But real quick recap, our watershed team is comprised of 2 full-time watershed rangers, myself and Miles Churchill, who's our resident caretaker. We're the primary operators of Button Rock Dam. And then we have 2 seasonal watershed rangers that work with us about 9 months a year. And then new this year, we have a fixed-term grant-funded watershed stewardship forest technician named Liz Kame, who you met in December when she came and presented on the forest stewardship program. Primary duties of the watershed team is operating Button Rock Dam and supporting raw water utilities, land management on the 3,000 acres, enforcement of Longmont Municipal Code, and coordinating with law enforcement agencies up there, emergency response and fire suppression, and public outreach and education. So just kind of high-level trends that we're seeing over the last year. Visitation to the preserve is open to the public. Seems to be stabilizing following a very large decrease related to the 2023 ban on dogs up there, as well as just kind of stabilizing post-pandemic. People kind of going back to whatever they did before the 2019 or the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and onwards. That spiked public lands visitation everywhere. Button Rock was no exception to that. So things are stabilizing. This winter we've been experiencing significant parking impacts from our upper North St. Vrain pipeline repairs, our main water line from Button Rock down to the Nelson Flanders water treatment plant. But that is hopefully wrapping up before this weekend, which is great for visitors and for rangers. We are expecting to see an increase in mountain pine beetle activity in the northern Front Range and at Button Rock for a variety of reasons, native bark beetle pest, but with drought conditions in the state and just kind of general populations of the beetle in Boulder County, a lot of forest experts are anticipating an outbreak, and then we're expecting an average wildfire season in northern Colorado, which an average fire season in Colorado is still pretty active, so something that we're always vigilant about. And then we're anticipating some potential impacts from federal funding restructuring and cuts that could impact mostly our agency partners like AmeriCorps that supports the Larimer County Conservation Corps. We have 2 grants that are funding work with them this summer for the 4th year in a row, 3rd year, 4th year in a row. So currently they've been on and off the chopping block, and we're just kind of waiting to see if they're able to do their 16 weeks of work for us this year, which is one of our biggest projects. Resource protection, obviously that's a big part of ranger work. In 2024 we made over 850 code enforcement contacts. We're very educational as rangers, so we issued about 500 warnings and 26 tickets. Top violations, generally dogs, camping, campfires, things like that. We're overall seeing good improvement in compliance after big rules changes rolled out in 2023. So we saw a 41% reduction in violations of our seasonal and permanent habitat protection closures that were implemented after the Button Rock Management Plan was adopted, and 56% reduction in dog violations. So that's a nice improvement for our habitat up there. As I said, rangers are first responders. We responded to 10 EMS incidents on the preserve last year and 2 wildfires, including the Colson Gulch fire that we fought in July with other local fire departments and the U.S. Forest Service. It was a fire that was just outside our boundary in Colson Gulch. We evacuated the park during the Stone Canyon fire, and that was near Lyons. And then just some other kind of notable EMS calls up there: rattlesnake bite, contractor getting hit by a log, just kind of hazards of the terrain and the job. The genesis of the Watershed Ranger program was, supporting the raw water system and protection of the watershed. So we do a lot to support water utility operations in addition to managing Button Rock Dam. We complete safety inspections, the emergency action plan. This past year we really focused on infrastructure security. So we replaced a vehicle gate blocking access to the dam that had been destroyed in the 2013 flood. So we finally rebuilt that. We installed some security cameras at the dam site, and then we spent a lot of time supporting repairs to our water pipeline, working closely with Holly Valenta and other engineering and utilities folks. And we've had great experience with our contractors that have been working on that project. We did a little bit of fire mitigation at the hydroelectric plant, and we continue to work on a automated piezometer well monitoring system at Button Rock Dam that's been a little bit finicky. Recapping accomplishments from last year, we completed winter pile burning despite having pretty thin snowpack. We took advantage of any opportunity where we had sufficient snow, working under the guidance of Boulder County Sheriff's Office Fire Management. Burned 250 slash piles in the logjam project area, which is by our inlet. Closing out that 2021 project, we burned 30 piles in Antelope Park, which is on the Hall Ranch boundary. That was a 2023 treatment, forestry treatment, and then we assisted the Sheriff's Office in burning about 75 piles on Hall Ranch. Looking forward to 2025, as I mentioned, we've got continuing our partnership with Larimer County Conservation Corps as one of our objectives for this year, and that's been supported by a GOCO and a co-swap, both state of Colorado related grants, for about 16 weeks of Conservation Corps labor, and we're just kind of waiting and hoping that continues as planned, but we're focusing in these areas in green near Ralph Price Reservoir and Longmont Reservoir downstream. That's all I've got. I'm happy to take any questions or go into greater depth on any of these topics.
Dan?
Is there current construction going on at Button Rock now?
Construction, or are you talking about repairs to the utility line?
You tell me.
So our contractor, Redline Pipeline, just wrapped up the major repair to the 2023 washout underneath the upper North St. Vrain pipeline. That was their biggest engineering project, but the best access. So that used a crane and I-beams and engineered solutions to protect that part of the pipeline that had a cliff basically erode out from underneath it during a flash flood in August 2023. So now they're shifting to multiple other areas that need repairs. But the work is hopefully going to be pretty much done after this week at the parking lot. Yeah.
So just in general, after all the fire mitigation work that's been done over the last several years, how prepared do you think we are for a fire up in that area?
Yeah, so in terms of wildfire preparedness, we've been improving our training partnerships with other agencies. So Longmont Fire partnered with us for the first time that I'm aware of on an annual wildland refresher training. So we had Public Safety Department come up to Button Rock and use it as their classroom, and trained alongside Parks and Natural Resources and rangers up at the reservoir. So that was great to familiarize them with our watershed, since they are a fire department, and have a lot of expertise. And I think the Stone Canyon fire was a big wake up as it threatened Nelson Flanders water treatment plant, that even though we're a community, in the grasslands, that we're still subject to fire risk. Our treatments that we're doing, whenever possible, we try to connect them with treatments cross boundary. So treatments on Riverside Ranch open space, which is Boulder County, Hall Ranch, other properties like that. The U.S. Forest Service is very soon completing a NEPA process for doing fuels treatments and forest restoration treatments in the St. Vrain watershed. If they haven't completed it already, they're very close. That's been going on for over 2 years. And then we work closely with Colorado State Forest Service to figure out where treatments are on private property, so we can stitch them all together and hopefully make a difference at a landscape scale. That said, if you have 100-mile-an-hour winds or 70-mile-an-hour winds like we had in the Calwood fire, the level of treatment that you would need, it starts to get out of sync with what you can accomplish while still maintaining a forest ecosystem, right? So we're trying to do our best to lower the intensity of fire. Fire is a natural part of the landscape, and we want it to be part of the landscape, but we also, as humans, right, want to protect our values that are out there. So in terms of moderate fire, low intensity fire, I think we're doing a great job. there's always going to be severe, extreme fire events, and we'll just have to be prepared for them.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Well, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bruce.
Okay, Chelsea?
Hi everyone, my name is Chelsea Wilson and I have been the senior ranger at Union Reservoir for about 1.5 years now, so I may not have met everyone in the room. So we'll go into, there we go. So as far as ranger staffing for Union Reservoir goes, the yellow highlighted rangers are the ones who are directly for Union Reservoir. So myself, the senior ranger, I've got one park ranger 2, one park ranger 1, and then 2 temp rangers. Anyone else on this list is just kind of a bonus staff who their direct job is out in our parks, trails, open space, greenways. But in order to cover all of the shifts that I need at Union Reservoir, when it comes to a ranger being there open to close, because we are operating on a system that the gate is closed until a ranger's there, and then there's a certain closing time where no one is allowed to be in the park after rangers leave. So in order to accomplish covering all those shifts, just those 5 people cannot do that. So our parks, open space, trails, greenways rangers also help cover at Union Reservoir as well. As far as what we do, a big part of our job is outreach and education, resource protection, code enforcement, and public safety. And within that, there's a lot of things that are directed for Union, and then a lot of things that are similar out in our open space trails, greenways, parks that overlap. So we have a lot of things to do when it comes to serving the public and keeping people safe. As far as recreation for Union Reservoir goes for this year, as Ken said, Union Reservoir is open to the public, and we have been opened to boating since March 1st, which is our typical normal opening for the season. It's always ice dependent. If we have ice on the lake, it's not safe for people to go out, but we were clear as of March 1st. However, with the fact that Union Reservoir is only at 50% full, it does make it a little bit more difficult for our trailered boaters because currently I cannot put my floating public dock in the water because I have no more room and no more chain and extension to put it out in the water. However, boaters and fishermen are the most determined people I've ever met in my entire life, so they are coming out and still launching and still catching fish. So right now, walleye and wiper fishing is really good, and everyone is really excited and happy, and the word's gotten out. So I have a ton of trailer boats over the weekend, which is a good thing because that helps with revenue. And then we have a partnership and working relationship with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and we've got an aquatic biologist who comes out and does our fish surveys and monitors Union Reservoir as a fish hatchery and a fishing resource in general. And he determined that we needed to reduce our wiper bag limit from 10 down to 5 for this year, and that will continue on until potentially the research or the science changes for him to support increasing it, which I'm not sure that he would right now, and I will talk about another project with CPW later to assist in helping with the fish population. And then shoreline fishing, because we are low water, we have a lot more exposed shorelines, so shore fishermen are a lot happier because they actually have a lot more area to spread out and fish from that is not then being descended upon by our paddle boarders. So they're actually much happier than they usually are because they usually tell me they don't have enough room to shore fish. So paddle boarders still coming out and recreating on the weekends as well. It hasn't really changed any of that. People still coming out every day to use our dog beach, so it doesn't change anything there. The one kind of major change for recreation and for Union is the delayed opening of the swim area. The water level currently is just too low in order to maintain a safe operating swim area. We have also found some old debris in the water line, glass and other things that we're concerned about, and so I can only sift through the sand and the water so much as a ranger every day to collect those things, where it was out of an abundance of caution to go ahead and close the swim area until we do increase the water to what we have already cleaned and what we deem as safe for the public. With that, we are suggesting that people wear water shoes, but that's just not at Union. Personally, I paddleboard and I wear water shoes anytime I go and launch, because I don't know if I'll be able to come back to the same beach that I launched from. So nothing new really, it's just kind of educating the public of how to be safer for themselves, which is always a good thing, because they may not get the same information at another reservoir that they go to of how to be safe. Rocky Mountain Paddleboard is our paddleboard rental, and they are going to be opening for the season, and they're really excited, and their area seems to not be affected by any of the issues, so they're gearing up and ready to go. And then we have a ton of special events that are going to go on throughout the season: a solstice swim, 2 triathlons, and our famous golden retriever event. If you want to see a ton of golden retrievers all at once, please come out on September 13th, because it's really fun. Something from last year that was an accomplishment that I was really proud of was revamping our aquatic nuisance species program when it came to boat inspections. In 2023, their inspections were only 1,375, and in total in 2024, we did 2,562 inspections. So part of that is just we had an increase in number of boaters that were coming out to recreate in 2024. Part of that was mandating that everyone actually enter the information on boat inspections into the WID program that CPW has adopted, so that we have that data that's collected. And part of it is just kind of me being adamant that this is what we're doing, and we're making sure that we're inspecting people just like the state does, with trailers and even electric trolling motors that are going out on hand launch boats. That being said, I also increased the outgoing inspections. They were doing seals just kind of on an ask basis, and I was making it more of a mandatory that exiting boats were getting seals. And what that looks like is they get a wire and seal on their boat that's attached to the trailer, so that it's verifiable that they have not removed that seal, they have not launched at any other waters, so that when they're returning to Union Reservoir, I can say, okay, you don't have any aquatic nuisance species from another lake that I don't know about, I'm going to cut your seal and you can go. As long as that seal is intact, they have the receipt paper that we hand to them, and everything looks fine, then they can kind of cut and go. And it makes the incoming inspection a lot faster for boaters. They get on the water a lot faster. Some of the concerning things when it comes to aquatic nuisance species for Union Reservoir at the bottom is Eurasian water milfoil. There's a lot of reservoirs in the Denver metro area that have Eurasian water milfoil, which is a plant species that mats up the bed or the surface of the water, that would hinder recreation and swimming areas. So we monitor for that. Obviously making sure that it's not coming in on incoming boats as well. New Zealand mud snails, which Chatfield has New Zealand mud snails, and a lot of boats that have come up to Union also go to Chatfield. So making sure that we're inspecting people's anchors as well, not just their boat, inspecting their equipment and everything that's inside the boat. And you can't really see it with Nicole down there, but rusty crayfish was found in the West Fork Little Thompson River, which is relatively close to us, so that would be a concern. The rusty crayfish is a concern because they're an aggressive species, and they will attack swimmers. So that's why we would be concerned about that one, less so that, they would do any other damage, other than they do eat lower species that native crayfish also survive on, so that would be a concern as well. As far as Union Reservoir kind of operation and projects go, I started a CIP project to create a new breakwater jetty because we had a ranger dock last year that was kind of in this general area here that's completely exposed to the wind and got decimated last summer, whereas the public dock is on the east side of the current breakwater jetty and is protected from the wind. So I needed, if I was going to replace the dock or piecemeal our current dock together, I was going to need something to protect it either way. So the project is, I would say, 90% done. There are some other things that we need to do and more construction things to add our floating public dock or our ranger dock to this project. But this is just a sample picture of the dock with North Colorado Marine that we're going to be purchasing. That's a much heavier duty system than the kind of plastic easy dock system that we currently have that broke apart. And this way I don't have to play Lego pieces with this easy dock system, which is what we currently do. This is one full system, and the Northern Colorado Marine is going to help us install it. They'll come out and teach us how to do it, and they may even come out to help us deploy it and bring it back in every year. So they're a company out of Loveland, and they've been really great with helping us figure this out. So I kind of spoke about a project with CPW. With conjunction with Jim Crick, our ecosystem management manager, applied for a Fishing is Fun grant in order to install fish habitat structures inside a Union Reservoir because it is pretty barren out there, and so there's not a whole lot of areas for smaller fish or spawning fish to hide. So that's kind of one of the reasons that our aquatic biologist reduced the bag limit for wiper, was he wasn't seeing those smaller numbers or smaller size fish, and they're not growing to adult size fast enough. So putting in these kind of medieval looking structures for habitat is going to help. They are really flexible because there's obviously that concern of boats hitting them when they're sort of near the water surface. They're super flexible. Boats can hit them. They will be completely fine and no issues. Also, they're designed so that hooks and lures slide right off of them. So anglers are not going to get stuck or snagged in them as well. But we'll have them at differing heights. There's some 7 to 8 foot options, and then kind of go down into shoreline depending on what species you're trying to target. But this is a project that needs to happen when we actually have water, because you put these structures together and then you take them out on a barge and then drop them in the water that way, but I need water in order to have that barge to be able to go in these areas. So the lifespan of this project is into January of 2027. Just in case we don't have enough water this fall, we have all of next year to get this done. We've done a lot of improvements to the ADA fishing pier as well. I particularly have a seeing impaired gentleman who I was concerned of falling off the cliffs that are around the ADA fishing pier, so we installed fencing for that person, not just them, but everyone in general, and then working on some other improvements with Stephanie Cooper. I'm working with the water department to potentially install a trash boom at the inlet of Union Reservoir to try to help mitigate some of the trash coming into the reservoir, and so that trash does not go out in the outlet as well, which is a concern. We're working on different capacity plans when it comes to holidays, because it's unsafe for people just to pile up on County Road 26 for hours and hours and hours, and then through traffic having to go around people or driving down the wrong side of the road. So trying to figure out what that looks like, and it potentially would be a 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour window that the park is closed. We just have people move on, and then when the park is clear enough, we open it back up to the public. But it's a safety concern that not only is for us, for the neighborhood around us, but also for our police department, who has had to come out and help us with fist fights in line when people are angry at each other. So, budget, we're dealing with budget stuff in the midst of it. So, hoping to eventually have a union operating budget separate from our ranger budget, and actually establish a ranger budget, because yes, we do have rangers that are out in open space, parks, trails, and greenways who work at Union Reservoir, but there needs to be a kind of a better split based on salaries and things like that. And then we are also working with the fact that there's a master plan for Union, and when that will happen, an enlargement when not that will happen, and a loop trail of when not that will happen. But at the end of the day, I have to make the park safe. And for visitors, I have to make it safe for staff, and I'm trying to just make it a little bit better for everyone every single day. So regardless of what's going to happen in the future, I've got to do what I have and make improvements with what I have right now. So, thank you. Any questions?
How long have you been on this job?
For Union, a year and a half.
Okay. Pretty comprehensive report. Any questions for Chelsea? Todd?
Quick one. So I know, like in Loveland, where so many of the lakes are just right there in town, and there's houses and things around it. I know there's a different circumstance because Union's a little bit outside. But like when the water levels come down and there's so much exposed shoreline and really so much exposed past kind of lake sediment essentially.
Mm-hmm.
When the wind kicks up and stuff, there's a problem with dust and in other municipalities there's concern about what's in the dust and all these kind of things, right? Depending on exactly what the history of the lake is. Any of that kind of issue out at Union when, especially in a year like this when the reservoir levels are so far down?
There's a potential concern for it, but we've had really windy days lately, and the lake bed doesn't really move. It's very like a gluey goop type mud consistency that doesn't really go anywhere. So I'm more of a concern of dust and things from my parking lot area and my actual crusher find, driving surface in the main parking areas than the lake bed itself.
There's tons of dirt roads around.
We have dirt roads.
Yeah.
So.
Other questions? Thanks, Chelsea.
Just one quick question.
Oh, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Has there ever been any talk through the Division of Wildlife about actually prohibiting boats that come from Powell?
I think they would love to do that if they could, but I don't think that's a big sell right
It's
now.
not, but I think to protect our entire state
Yeah.
and all of our water bodies,
What happens when there's no water in Powell?
then we don't have to worry about those boats coming here.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that argument from a lot of things, right? From
you can.
like Powell, like anywhere outside of Colorado don't allow, but it's the revenue source that they get from them coming in, because the state of Colorado requires, even if you're registered in another state where it's valid for that year, they require an aquatic nuisance species stamp, which is $50 for out-of-state boaters. So that money coming from out-of-state does go to fund the aquatic nuisance species program, and they have added inspection and decon stations at a lot of the ports of entry. So they're trying to catch those boaters coming from all of the other states. So I think that loss of revenue for that program would take a big hit if they did that.
Okay, thanks again. All right, water audit update. Michael?
When you go up there, I don't actually have a huge presentation, it's just more just general notes that you want to read on there. Hello everyone, my name is Michael Castillo. I'm a civil engineer working in the Water and Waste Department Engineering Division. And I have been working for the city for a little over a year, and so this water audit was kind of one of the first tasks that I was tasked with working for the city. And so I have completed the 2023 and 2024 water audits. And so I think moving forward, I'll probably be the main champion of taking the water audit over. And because this is a yearly thing that is required by law. It was established in 2010 and is overseen by the Colorado Water Conservation Board, and they required this along with other reporting to go into our yearly reporting that they oversee. And so basically what this water audit is, it's using the AWWA M36 methodology, which is the industry standard for quantifying water losses in the system. And basically it's a spreadsheet software that is put out by the AWWA, and we just put in inputs, just going through all of our record customer meter data, all of our anything that's entering the system, any treated water entering the system, and seeing is it actually getting to the customers or to like the uses they're intended for. And then it's basically a glorified water balance for what's going in should be the same as coming out, but usually it's not, and that's accounted for from those water losses. And there's either apparent water losses or real water losses, where they try to determine using the mass balance method of the water. Real water losses is stuff that's actually leaving the system, physically leaving the system through leaks or tank overflows, unintended tank overflows, stuff like that. But then the apparent losses, what they also call paper losses, is the losses that it's getting to the customer, but the volume may or may not be accurately recorded based on meter inaccuracies or system overall, like system management errors and practices that we may have. And so once we prepare this water audit, we go through the Colorado Water Loss Initiative has put it's Kavanaugh is a firm that basically does all the validation sessions. So like once we prepare this audit, we'll schedule a validation session, and usually me and then one of the main operators, Nick Ehrlich, is usually in the meetings with me, because he has a very sophisticated knowledge of all the systems and our practices. And we just basically go through the spreadsheet and validate how believable is our data, and based on certain practices. And so there is a whole questionnaire along with inputting numbers that basically the validator will determine where we rank on that validation level of is this data accurate, and if it's not, where can we make improvements so we can get accurate data. And the more accurate, the whole push of this is the more accurate data that we get, the easier it is for us to develop practices, and mainly just practices to help us understand and identify where these water losses are coming from. But for the most part, we've been ranking in the same data validity, because they give us 4 different categories of data validity scores, and the higher the score, the more accurate we presume that data to be. And so we're typically in the tier 3 range, which means there is some improvements that can be made on how we gather data, and just stuff we can implement in either SCADA or meter, like meter accuracy testing and stuff like that. So
Is it basically to track water losses?
yes, yes, and then provide us a tool for like after the validator we do our session, he'll come back with improvements that we can make to to increase our data validity score, and we try to implement those.
So I love the water loss audit approach. I've had some experience with it. It was a while back, but it's super cool because it is one of the few conservation measures that is revenue positive. Like, because what they do, they go through and they look, and if meters are under reading, you can get more money, right? You can replace the meters, get more money. But also that sends a feedback signal to customers of, hey, you're using this much, and people will sometimes use less. And then, of course, there's the typical water loss that we think of system leakage. If you can hunt that down too and make a case that, hey, it is worth it to improve this area of leakage from a revenue perspective because this is water we're not getting money for. So I'm a huge fan. Have you completed the audit, or are you still in the process?
Yes, we just
Okay.
completed it last week, actually, so we
Okay,
did our
cool.
complete validation session, and so.
I'd love to see some of the breakdown of your numbers.
Yeah.
Like which ended up in which category, the unaccounted for water, the unbilled, unmetered, all of those different categories. That'd be great.
Yeah, I can definitely send that out to anybody that's interested.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
it's-
just in general, how leaky are we?
We're typically we're in the range of, I would say 5 to 10%. Real average around 7% annual water volume lost to either apparent leakages or to just under registering meters and customer meters and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask next then, like, what's the breakdown between the apparent and the real losses? So 50-50?
I would say the apparent losses are higher than our physical losses. And then I feel our physical losses also have been shown to be going down, and I feel like that is largely to our water replacement program, our water line replacement program, where we try to typically do a mile or more of water line replacement each year, where we try to identify areas that have history of leaking areas or just the age of the pipeline, and a lot of it is cast iron pipe, pre 1960s kind of pipe, and I feel like that is really helping how much our real losses are.
Dana?
I'm assuming there's budget ramifications for this as a result of this. That would show, if we were leaking, we need capital improvements in certain areas. And once we do this audit, is the audit shared with council to show how successful we are, or if we need improvements in particular areas? I don't know where this goes.
So like he said, we're kind of just starting down this path of using this tool. I know we did just recently go to council as far as our water line rehab. We know that we have leaks and we keep track of those from that standpoint, but I think it is
Does
something
the audit
that we can-
identify those particular areas, or just in general that we've
In
got?
general.
Yeah, it's more of it in
loss.
general, because they basically compute the real and apparent losses based on the whole water balance of what's going in and what we see coming out based on from customer meters or because we get into all the water that we use, what they call as unmetered, unbilled water, which is for firefighting, which is water line flushing.
Sure,
all of those.
that are, yeah.
And before, I think too, also just our practices back before I started, it was a lot of those things were based on assumptions, and now we're putting practices into play where we can actually compute them based on, we put in this much 8-inch pipe, this much, like different pipes, and we know basically how much a flushing volume is gonna take because of that linear footage that we added. And so, just, trying to be more methodical.
And I think this establishes that baseline, right? Moving
Right.
forward, now we have data to compare, how are we doing? Are we getting less each year? Are we getting more each year?
Yeah,
In
I love
tandem with the data that we get from where our water line leaks are. And, but like Michael was saying, there's just gonna be a certain amount of O&M where there's gonna be losses through the
Right.
flushing program. Price Park last year, we had to fill a couple of
20,
times.
yeah,
for
20 million
testing.
gallons was used
So
just
that's
for that.
significant when you're talking about some of this.
I personally would love to see the results of the annual report and, what recommendations and what the next steps are to you know, go from that 2 to a 3 or whatever that number, that realm is.
I feel like the biggest thing that we could be doing is actual like in situ testing for the water meters to understand if they are under registering or over registering, because how our current practices are is if it's within the manufacturer limit of 1%, then we call it yeah. But if we can actually quantify those percentages, real percentages, then we can get to that next level of data validity.
Are we going through water meter replacement still, or have we done the bulk of it? Or?
Yeah, and this, I actually worked on a project for phase 4 of our AMI, putting AMI gateways to get more more complete coverage of the city for picking up areas that we weren't getting. And now, I think for the majority of the city, around the city, we're like at 99% coverage. Now I think the next step is looking at like hygiene, for one example, like areas outside the city that we still have stale water to.
Service thing.
You know, 5 to 10%, right? That's, we obviously want to be 0% or 1 to 2%. What's kind of an average? Have they kind of talked about other utilities?
Not necessarily, and then John Robb hates when I use the percentage. He thinks it's based on its volumes.
Sure.
But I mean, I think 7% is, I mean, honestly, in a really, because 10% I feel like is an industry standard of what you could assume in losses. They don't actually get into that and share other people's data from other municipalities with me at least. But I mean, I feel like we are making improvements, and this year we were at a little over 5%, and which is honestly the best that we've had in the last 10
10%
years.
is the standard. I would think 5 is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd also like to throw out there too that we have talked about the meters and testing those meters. That has a large cost and time implication to it, but we have replaced 99% of our meters in the last 10 years, and we do have a program to go in and replace those that are 10 years old or older every year, so we have approximately 10% that we're replacing. And then what we've talked about in the past is that really I don't know that we would, for that improvement to move to the next tier, that's a lot of expense and a lot of time that most likely will not indicate a percentage or two of improvement.
I think that's one of the neat things about the M36 water loss audit approach though, is it looks at the value of the water, like revenue water versus non-revenue water, and what's actually worth chasing. And so that's really good. I also seem to recall that like the larger meters were more critical to the overall audit. Like it's, you know, your plant output meters, which are very expensive, horrible to replace, and even hard to test. And so those are kind of a critical piece, which kind of gets back to the data validation being.
And that's kind of also a thing is because we don't necessarily have one single master meter leaving the plant. It's a combination of all the combined filter effluent meters, and so it's more of a totalized, like it's programmed in to calculate, because you have to also account for like the backwash, filter to wastewater, and a lot of that was not being accounted for previously, but we have made strides to actually start documenting our filter to waste production on a daily basis.
And just so I'm clear, I think you've already said this, but is this your first year doing an M36 style audit?
This is my second.
Your second year?
Yeah.
And is it the utilities second year?
No, utility's been doing it since 2014, I believe.
Okay, great.
And I took it over from the water efficiency group.
That's the part that, okay, cool. It's a nice piece, it really is.
Anything else?
And then this isn't a question necessarily from the city's benefit or something, but from the customer's benefit. There was some talk a couple of years back about like being able to provide customers with real-time kind of data about their own water usage.
And I think we are making that From my understanding, have been directly involved in the conversation with the billing, but I think that they are making that step to try to give customers real-time data, and a part of that was getting that full coverage with the AMI.
Very cool.
That'd be good.
Okay, thank you. Good luck. All right, Alex,
Yeah.
legislative report?
Yeah, I'll try and make this one a little quicker. I know water board's been around here for a couple hours already, don't wanna keep you guys here for longer. But the legislative session concluded on May 7th, and so today I'm really kind of just bringing, some quick overview of some important legislation from the 2025 regular session. Nicole's also gonna be helping me out. We have 3 of them, the HB 25-1211, tap fees imposed by special districts, HB 25-1113, limit turf in new residential development, HB 25-115, 115, water supply measurement and forecasting program. Nicole, I'll let you go ahead and quickly go over the limited turf in new residential development.
Yeah, so the turf bill was an extension on, well, they amended the terms to include multi-family residential properties in addition to the commercial properties. So it prohibits the installation of non-functional turf, artificial turf, and invasive plant species for any new developments. For this bill, multi-family residential developments on or after January 1st, 2028.
And then there is tap fees imposed by special districts. This one doesn't currently really impact the city, but it's one that we think is important to monitor in the coming years because it could be reintroduced and amended to include possible, municipalities. And that would be concerning to us because of the language it includes about, how you would set tap fees and how that might impact the city. That would be very important for us to stay aware of. And lastly is the water supply measurement and forecasting program. Depending on how this one develops, I could see it assisting the city in future projections on supply and water shortage. It's really kind of just an exploration of possible technologies that could assist in state snowpack measurements and forecasting. And so I see that as, we'll see what can come out of that. It was including an appropriation of money towards funding this project, but most of this is kind of, we'll see what happens. The limited turf for new residential development, I think, is really the only clear-cut one that will have impacts in the foreseeable future for the city.
Do we anticipate with this passing that future HOAs irrigated turf grass will be significantly reduced, and that at some point in time the city will be tossed the bone to take over HOA properties as they have in the past? So you see a real reduction in some of those HOA open areas that are really irrigated turf grass.
Yeah, I'm speaking as not a homeowner, but single family homes are not included yet.
Right.
So, I mean, I would imagine most HOAs include single family homes, and this is multifamily, so I really can't tell what the impact will be in regards to that, but do you have a certain disdain for HOAs?
No.
Spit it out.
Not on the record. No. When managed correctly, no problem.
Anything else for Alex or Nicole? Nicole, you got anything else? We don't call on you much. We know you're there though. Okay, well, thanks, Alex.
Of course.
Okay, Windy Gap Firming, Kim?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick update on the Windy Gap Firming project. I think as we had discussed last month, that the project's really wrapping up. That's really good news for us. Kind of a quick update from this last month. The last of the piping has been put in from the valve chamber to the portal to the tunnel that goes into the reservoir. All the flow meters are installed. The leakage, the dry air leakage testing is all done, and they're just now starting to do the wet water. The air pressure tested everything first, and then they're wet testing it, and they should be done that now. One really great advancement is that the inlet outlet tower, the last pour, was completed at the end of last lift for that. So basically that inlet outlet tower is completed. That was the last thing that really needed to get done, so we could start filling. And then under drains, staff gauges, those type of things. And they're, of course, last month report they were done with the saddle dam, and they're reseeding that, and then working on the final grading of the downstream. So basically we're all but, we expect to finish the main dam within a few weeks. So we're really getting close. This is a couple weeks, 3 weeks old. So at that time it was 333 feet tall of the 350 feet with 5 to 6 lifts a week. So at the start of this month, there was only 32 lifts left to complete the dam. So that's really getting close. So we got just about a month and a half now before we commission the project. We still have, as far as the budget, still about 20% of the revised contingency is still available. So it's looking really good about being able to come in on time and on budget. This is where we are right now. As you can see, we're getting very close and we're on schedule. 95% of the project is completed and paid out, so that's really good. So that's really all we have on the construction itself. One thing I did want to, not really related to the Fermi project, but to Windy Gap itself. About once every 5 to 10 years, the Northern District does we do an inspection of the West Slope facilities. The participants themselves, usually it's staff members. I've done it a couple times over the years, but it's usually smaller groups, so we can only take 1 or 2 people from each participant. This year they've scheduled it again this year to go over, and I think it's kind of important as owners of the project, I totally trust Northern does a really great job on maintenance, really good job on operating the project, but it's still, I think, incumbent upon us to occasionally take a look at it. This year there was such a strong interest in doing that and going there, they expanded the size of the group that they're going to take over. So Chris and I are going to be able to make it and to inspect the facilities over on the west, the pumping plant and the facilities on the west slope. Because they've opened it up, they've allowed a few more participants to come from each participant. So would like to ask the water board if anybody is interested in going over as part of that inspection tour. We can accommodate more people this year. So it's going to be Tuesday, June 24th. So it's a little over a month from now. And there's certainly, but you got to go to the West Slope, so it takes all day, especially driving over Trail Ridge. You know how slow that is. But if any of the board members or Diane, if you're interested, let us know. We can, I think we can fit whoever would like to be able to go and has the availability to do that. But if we have more than 2, we'll need to notice it. That's the only thing. So feel free to either call Heather or myself and let us know if you know right now today, kind of a last minute thing, I've talked to you about it. But if you think about it the next, I probably would like to know within the next couple of weeks, by say the end of May, just so I can make sure I get a spot reserved for you. But if you're interested in doing that, let us know, and I think we can sign more than 2 people up, so wanted to let you know about that. So anyway, I'd be happy to answer any questions on Windy Gap, but we're still planning on starting putting water in July, so next month I hope to be able to tell you exactly when we're doing that.
Right.
Yes.
I was just asked about putting the water in Ken, because clearly there's not a lot of water in the basin. So has that affected the relative scarcity of water supply, affected the planned fill?
It has not, for the primary reason that the Bureau of Reclamation assumed that Windy Gap would not pump this year.
Yeah.
And so but they still planned on allocating 50,000 acre feet of water in
Gotcha.
Lake Granby,
Yeah.
CVT water as pre-positioned water.
Yeah.
We've now pumped about 2,500 acre feet of Windy Gap, and we hope to pump more. And it's always a balance of watching how fast, how much snowpack is still over there. We don't want to pump, because unfortunately, I mean, if this project was 1 month sooner, we'd be putting that Windy Gap water in there. But that Windy Gap's got to stay in Granby until July when we can put it in, and at that point, the project may spill, and it would spill the Windy Gap water first. So it's going to be a real tight window. But yeah, we are very hopeful that we'll get all 2,500, and maybe we pump another 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 acre feet. We'll get maybe 5,000 acre feet of Windy Gap water in there, and then we put 45,000 acre feet of CBT. But the Bureau is planning on bringing that much CBT water over. Less Windy Gap if we have some Windy Gap.
Makes sense.
And right now, we're doing well. We got 1 pump on of the 4 pumps. We got 1 pump of Windy Gap on, and we're cycling a second pump. It pumps about a day or 2, and then has to be shut off as the Windy Gap reservoir fills. And so it's looking real good right now. Yeah.
So you think filling sometime in July?
Yes, we'll start filling in July. Is the current plan.
I went on the tour up there, and they're trying to envision, they said, all this stuff's gotta be out of there.
It does.
There is a lot of stuff. You mean all the plants they've got set up, that's gonna be a big project to dig all that stuff out of there, but
It is.
I assume they've got a plan.
They do. In fact, they've been demobilizing now for about 6 months, and the way you figure that, the number of employees actually there is about half of what it was. So.
And they've been hauling equipment out there, I assume.
Yeah, the large trucks are already, the top of the dam is so narrow now they can't even use the big trucks, so those are going out like now. And, yeah, but no, there's a huge amount of equipment. I agree with you. They'll probably be spending all of June doing that.
So, to complete the fill, what's it, a couple of year project to fill the dam, fill the reservoir?
We can fill, probably 50,000 acre feet is really all you'd want to fill. Technically, we can fill 1 foot a day, so it would take about, you can only fill so far, and then you gotta stop and let it sit for about a half a month, a couple of weeks, and then you can fill more. But you can fill about 1 foot a day, so technically you could get it filled in about a year, but they're only gonna put 50,000. I don't know that the Bureau will bring any water over next spring, but certainly a year from now, if Windy Gap pumps, that's gonna be, on paper, it'll be delivered to book out the water, the pre-positioned water that's put in there now, but it'll also be, water will be going in next spring-ish. So, yeah, it's entirely possible we'll fill the project, because that would take another 40,000 acre feet to fill it the next year. And if we can get 50 this year, I think we can maybe get 40 next year. Unless Wes keeps the drought going on. I hope not.
Anything else for Ken? Thanks, Ken.
Cool, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Joe,
Yes,
where are you down there?
I'm down here. Is that, all right, so Holly is actually gonna be giving the first part. We're just gonna give a capital projects, update.
Okay.
Haven't been here in a little while, so we got some, projects to share.
So what we need to do. Alrighty, well, Joe and I are gonna tag team today, and I'm going first. These are the 4 projects that we're gonna talk about. I get the first 2 and he gets the last 2. The first one is the washout repair on the North St. Vrain. Price was in this chair just earlier today, and he was talking about that construction that's going up at Button Rock. That was my project, and we're pulling the bridge. It's a temp bridge, and I'll show you a picture of that later in the presentation. We're hopefully pulling that tomorrow. So that means it's gonna be hard to get across the creek, so hopefully that means that everything is done. We did have to take up some of the parking area at Button Rock as part of that. That was our staging area for our equipment and crew. And I really appreciate all of the help that Price and the Rangers gave us during the project to just make the project go as smoothly as possible. This is kind of a timeline of the project. If you are going up, or if an individual is going up to Button Rock before 2023, they pulled into the parking lot. What they would see was a beautiful creek and a nice rock wall. They probably would never realize that we actually had a very, very important raw water pipeline that was just hanging up there, that was covered up by rock. But in late 2023, the rock cribbing that was either put there in 1911, whenever the pipeline was originally constructed, or else a few decades later, whenever the steel pipeline replaced the concrete pipeline, that rock cribbing fell away. And so we had a washout. In addition to the rock cribbing, we also had some material that was around the pipeline. And even though we had less than 2 sticks of pipe, so not a huge amount of pipe that was showing, this is a critical pipeline, and we were kind of worried that if additional washout occurred, we were just worried. So we got together a design team, a contractor, a construction, and then the city got together to create a constructible design, because there's lots of ways to do this, but part of what we learned is just it's difficult to construct in mountainous terrain. So trying to come up with an idea where we could actually secure the washout, but also actually something that we could construct, that was kind of one of the hurdles that we had to come up with. So you can see on the left what it looked like before the washout in the middle, and then the 2 right-hand pictures are the solution that we came up with. The pipeline is secured to steel beams. The steel beams are now secured to solid rock through rock anchors, and so additional material can continue to wash away, and the pipeline is actually secured to solid rock. So we feel good about the finished product. And as you can see, just so that, for example, the rangers or ops or anybody who's actually doing inspections on the pipeline, you can see what it looks like close up. We're able to, the city staff are still able to cross that washout area safely.
How much pipeline did you replace?
We did not replace the pipeline at all. We kept the pipeline there. It's just we have I-beams now going across the washout area, and those I-beams are we have concrete footers, and then we have actually rock anchors basically connecting everything to solid rock. So hopefully nothing's gonna move. Even though this took place, as I said, driving up the Button Rock, parking in the parking lot, you could see the washout directly in front of you. It's still really difficult to get to. We created the bridge that you see is a temp bridge. It's actually just a rail car, a temporary crossing construction tool, basically, to get us across the creek. And then part of this process was also maintaining our access. maintaining our access means making sure that we have cover on our pipeline. We've had a couple leaks in the last month. Whenever we have adequate cover, that means we're less likely to have corrosion we're less likely to have corrosion. One of the other things that cover also does is that this is a rocky environment. Rock is going to fall all the time, but if we have cover on our pipeline, that means a little bit of rock can fall, and hopefully as long as it's not large rock, we're able to actually protect our pipeline by having that cover. Another thing that cover does is it helps us make sure that if we have a repair, if we need to get to a leak, we can actually get crews and equipment and material up to that location. So that's part of the access work that we did for this project. And we did geohazard mitigation as part of this. We're in a rocky environment. We're always gonna have rock fall. We can't stop all rock from falling, but the goal is to reduce and mitigate any potential large damage that we could have. On the left-hand side, you'll see this is the Upper North St. Vrain near the hydro. And you can see there's not a huge, it looks like, but a boulder that fell onto the uncovered, basically pipeline that didn't have cover on it, and so we have a little bit of damage there. So that's off-site, but then part of the work that we did as part of this project, we had a fairly large boulder that was right in front of an electric pole. And so, in working with the rangers, that's just not good, because if it hits the pole, we have dry conditions, we could have sparking, we could have a fire. Just the idea is, the rock was also high danger, very likely to fall based on geotech. So it might be difficult to see, but there is, in the third and fourth picture, there's a tree in the third picture and a tree in the fourth picture. That's the same tree. So you can see the rock there before and after. So that's what, whenever we're talking about geohazard mitigation, just trying to get rid of rock that's potentially likely to fall, or anything that's high risk.
Were you blasted to get out of there, or?
We did not blast. We could just kind of hammer it. Any other questions maybe on that before I go to the next one? Any other questions on the Upper St. Vrain? The next project that we're currently working on is a spillway evaluation. The Button Rock is a high hazard dam. That means the state engineer's office does an annual inspection, and one of the things is just to make sure that we're always looking at our dam and making sure that, is there anything else that we need to do, we need to analyze. In 2013, when the spillway and the dam performed as designed, which is great. However, since 2013, some of the data and the models that are used to analyze the spillway have actually changed. So for example, like intensity, rain intensity, that model changed a little bit, something to do with soils. So whenever you have a storm, how much is likely to run off and how much is likely to infiltrate into the ground. And so as those data and models have been updated over the last few years, we needed to update our spillway analysis. We haven't completed the analysis right now, but we have gotten initial state engineer SEO feedback, and it looks like right now that our spillway continues to be adequately designed for, so at this point in time, we don't anticipate having to do any additional work on the spillway at this point. Any questions on that one? Do you like the pictures?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Very nice.
I'll turn it over to Joe.
Okay, thank you.
How'd you get those pictures?
Jumped really high.
Wes climbed up on a tall pole. Okay, so I'm Joe Mahalski, Engineering and Operations Administrator. You guys have heard from me before. So real quick, I'll go through a couple other projects. So this one's the Button Rock Dam outlet gate hydraulic controls replacement. These controls were installed with the original dam construction in the 60s. So they're pretty outdated. You can actually see a yellow bucket there. There is a leak, so that's not ideal. It's functioning and has been functioning, but it's a priority for us to get this fixed so that we are confident that we can operate the outlet gate and the emergency gate. So we're just starting design right now, but hopefully by the end of this year we'll be
pretty well complete with whatever we may need to do to update these controls for those gates. And then the last project is the Nelson Flanders forebay. So I had talked about this one before. We're losing some water out of the forebay. This also is classified as a high hazard dam out at Nelson Flanders. So this forebay basically takes all of our blended water into one pond. 30 million gallons is the storage. And it really gives us kind of a wide spot in the road operationally to be able to run the plant, settle out some, sediment in the forebay before we bring it into the plant. The state engineer's office has been allowing us to continue to use the forebay while we've been doing the design, and we're at the point now where we are going to be going out for bid in the next month. The state engineer's office is reviewing the design. What we found was that the leakage seemed to be limited to the north side, to the left in these pictures, where we have to basically excavate some existing soils on the existing site, are suitable clay soils, and bring them over to the forebay. We're going to be decreasing storage, but not by much. We're going down to like 29.5 million gallons of storage, so it doesn't really impact us too much, other than just trying to solidify the embankment on that north side. The bedrock gets really shallow on that north side, and where they put the riprap, they kind of excavated out during the original construction, and we think they just got too close to that existing bedrock, so there's a pathway there for the leakage that we're seeing as it comes up just on the north side of the pond. As part of this, we are also asking the state engineer to reclassify the dam from a high hazard to a significant. Really with high hazard, from what I've learned, is it's mainly just loss of life is what could happen. But if this were to fail, there's it's mainly sheet flow, no risk of death. There aren't too many residences around there with basements, so pretty big analysis that the engineers went through, and that again is under review by the state engineer's office right now. So we're hoping to start construction in August, September, and it's about a 4 or 5 month project from what the engineer's estimating. So hopefully by the end of the year we can put it back online. Looking to start taking it down to dry it out here middle of June after runoff, the runoff period. And we're also going to be excavating out. There's about 4 to 6 inches of sediment that's accumulated over the past 20 years in there that it's been in operation. So we had some good experience last year running our forebay bypass pipeline. So that's how we're going to operate the plant, is just directly feed those sources into the plant. So we won't have that wide spot in the road anymore. So it does make operations a little bit more challenging during that period, but we really don't have a choice while we do this work. So it'll be a good project once it's finished, and hopefully the leaks stop after that. But yeah, going to bid here in the next couple of months.
So exactly, what are you going to do? Are you going to?
So we're basically just going to be bringing in some clay material from the site a little bit further to the east, and just building this in here on the inside. You see how it's kind of built out a little bit here. This.
But are you going to drain this thing completely? Or?
We're going to have to drain it completely starting in June. So we think that'll take about a month. And then we want to dry it out so it's easy for the contractor to get in there and work all the material and everything. But it's mainly on this side right here where we're building it up.
But without the use of that, what's the impacts of the plant? Any?
So last summer we had to do this too when we first realized that we had the issue. We had algae issues out there, so we were taking the forebay down just to try to kill the algae and get it out of there. And when we took the forebay down, we realized that the leaks stopped on the north side. We originally, even the state engineer, when they would perform their annual inspections, we thought it was more of a spring coming from the land to the north where CEMEX is at, because that's higher ground. We just thought that the groundwater was just popping up right there. But we obviously discovered it was the forebay when we did take it down. So it does have impacts on the plant. We bring more sediment into the plant. Last summer we did fill up a residual pond. We have 6 ponds on the site that handle our normal solids that come in. It normally doesn't fill up as fast as how we filled it last year. So that's the main impact. There's some flow control impacts too, but we were able to figure that out last summer as we kind of did a dry run on what we're gonna have to do again. So in all honesty, it was a good experience for operations to have to take the forebay down, because we had never done it for a prolonged period of time in the previous 15, 20 years.
So impact to the irrigation ditch to the north?
Impacts to the irrigation ditch to the north.
I'm assuming that your loss of water from here was going into that ditch, was it? Or
No.
you know where that?
Yes.
I'm just curious.
We had a swale. I mean, it was
Highland was good.
Highland. Yeah, it was going into the basically the overflow area, but Highland was the one that was. Because we were originally thinking maybe there was leakage from that ditch to the north, but the elevations didn't support that.
Well, the ditch does leak, but just not there.
Yeah. Not as significantly.
Not
as significantly as what the forebay was doing. So, any questions on any of those projects?
You mentioned the underlying kind of bedrock, the interaction with the underlying bedrock. It's not, you're thinking this clay rind or something around the edge is gonna be sufficient, and it's not like you're grouting the underlying bedrock.
We're not grouting, so we did present that to the state engineers, and that could be a potential phase 2 if this initial clay lining doesn't take care of it enough. But the state engineer didn't think we had to go to that length for phase 1. And our engineer has done quite a few monitoring wells and exploratory borings and stuff out there where they feel fairly confident that this additional clay lining will take care of the majority of what we're seeing out there, so.
Time frame, when do you think completion?
So completion hopefully by the end of this year. It might squeak into next year depending on how much weather cooperates with us for what we have to do as far as all the compaction and moving the soils around and everything.
Any other questions for Joe? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any questions about major projects listing that we have coming up?
I don't know if it's an addition or something, but, I got to thinking, and there was something in some of the material that I was reading through, I don't remember exactly where, in preparation for the meeting today, where I was thinking, so the Palisades fire right out in California that had the significant loss of water pressure because it's such a widespread fire through this kind of urban, wildland interface and things. And it reminded me of a thought that I had during that period, but I never brought up it at water board. But I'm curious about whether or not the city feels like we have sufficient water pressure for a widespread fire issue, widespread into the city fire issue, something like, what happened down in Louisville, Superior, et cetera. If we use that as like a model fire or something, does the city have something that wouldn't fail the same way that it kind of maybe did a little bit in the Palisades fire? And I don't know that can be answered, of course, today, but it might be something to put on the agenda to just think about, maybe.
Yeah, we certainly could put more information on the agenda. The short answer would be because we're primarily gravity system. One of the things that happened out in LA was that a lot of their pumping stations lost their electricity, and they had a lot of pump zones, and then of course you couldn't provide water to. Also we have fairly decent storage. So that's critical, raw water storage, to provide you. And then finally, we have some interconnects with some adjacent water, rural domestic water districts, so, which would help us as well. But yeah, I think that's we could bring back, to make it more succinct and understandable, we could certainly bring that back as and then understanding that, I don't care how great a system is, you can, I can always come up with a scenario where you can, you can tax it, so that's a good point, and I think we can come back with some more information on that. But we are in really pretty good shape, yeah.
So I can walk away feeling good now, get a little more information later.
So can I just throw out there really quick that our system was well designed and we wouldn't have the same failure that they've had in other fires. I mean, when Louisville and Superior's fire happened, their entire water supply was engulfed and all of their pipes melted. They didn't have the ability to supply water. But there's also the scalability of what we designed for. So we designed to meet the IFC requirements, International Fire Code, and to be able to provide for what we would consider as a more likely fire. If we were to design for the types of fire that happen in California and to the south of us, we would have to way over design. We would have to have 15 to 20 times the amount of storage that we have right now. Even to be able to have water to get to the number of fire hydrants and the number of areas that you'd have to do in order to even be close to trying to mitigate something like that. So there's
maybe just hearing a little bit more about like the approach to that balance, right?
Sure.
Like how to what do you design to? You don't want to over design and waste a ton of money doing that, but you don't want to. But you also want to be realistic about what could happen in the future and things like that. Okay, interesting.
Okay. Just on information lines, I have a quick question, Ray. Heather sent out some information that you provided. Can you quickly tell me the essence of what that does?
I don't know what it does. It's just a presentation that came across my radar about water rights valuation, and it's being given by at least one of the people I know does do market data on water rights. But it's a presentation through Water Education for Colorado, and they do those amazing little like magazine type things that are on water law and where your water comes from and water conservation. They've got great publications. And so I'm hoping it's a good talk, but I'm not one of the speakers, so I'm not gonna fully endorse their ideas. But I just figured more information could be useful because where we've used water sales in part of our cash in lieu valuation, it could be good to see if we could get more information, more education on that. I think there might be a charge for the conference, so you'd have to like sign up, and I think it's like $15 whole. It's not horrible. So if folks are interested, you should do it. And that's all I've got. I'm not selling it. You don't have to give me the $15. No, you have to give it to them.
I just looked at the registration, it's $15.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just information on it.
Okay.
If y'all is interested.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
You can see what we got coming up for future board meetings, so I guess Cash and Lou will be chatting about that a little bit. Probably going some interesting directions on that, so that ought to be.
Has there been another sale of the remaining PRPA original project rights?
I think they're working on putting
They're working
forward
on-
a proposal to offer and collect bids, but we won't have any confirmed information for June.
Yes.
Wasn't there one though that became public? We used that a little bit in some understanding, but then there was one that was still under seal or something, and has that become more publicly available?
They're putting in, they have 5 units left to sell. I think they're putting either 2 units or 3 units out right now. I think it opens mid-summerish, late summerish.
Okay, so it's still just one that's now becoming available, not one that they already sold, but we don't know who bought it and how much for?
Correct.
Okay.
Any sense that this could inform our water, our cash in lieu analysis throughout the year, not June, but like, I guess we're looking at it probably in October again, September, thank you.
Yeah, I don't, I'm doubtful that we'll have that much information to be able to make use for data to determine a new change for cash in lieu.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be,
The timing
it probably is
tight.
gonna be, yeah, I think it's more likely gonna be in 2026 before we have any numbers.
Alright, it's good to know.
On that note for June, we have a couple members who already stated they won't be able to be at the meeting. So, Roger and, Renee and Tom, do you have any conflicts for the June meeting on June 16th?
I looked at my calendar and I think I'm good.
I don't.
I'm able to be here.
Okay. Sounds good.
Who's leaving?
Dan and Scott will both be out of the country.
Really?
Yes.
Have
And I
a good
apologize.
time.
And I apologize, I have to leave now also, because I've got a hard stop at 5, so I
Okay, all right, we're,
apologize
hey,
for that.
I don't think there's anything else.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt, I just.
No, anyway, we'll
Alright.
go with 3, huh?
Is it 3?
All right, good meeting, a lot of information, so we're adjourned.